Shivi, a clinical social worker, working at Amcha 24 years. And
we worked together.
We did groups together, we worked together years and years, and I was in charge of the volunteer program until 2 years ago. And then now I'm just doing clinical work with survivors, and now it's more than survivors at Amcha. It takes care of all people, all traumatized people. Amcha is now open to the public. And then they asked me to come back to work with the German volunteers, and that's what we did. And then, surprise, Corona. One group left early, but this group we thought would be more normal, and it was in and out of lockdowns and challenging.
They left Israel already?
The one from 2019-20, they left early. Yeah, because of Corona and the lockdown in March. This group then came a year ago, or last September.
They only come for 1 year.
They come for a year, from September to August, a year. So they have another till the end of the month. This is our last meeting with Gizelle. We all have one more meeting before they leave, and have with Ot Kapora Shalom. They have their end meetings, and everybody had 2 people to visit, and stayed in touch by phone, and then met them, and then it was whatever, depending on the Corona status. And then when they all got vaccinated, and people all got vaccinated, then it opened up, and we're starting to visit in person. And they can tell you the stories of people. But what I do is I know survivors from a long time ago. I ask people, we always have to ask them if they're ready to have a German volunteer, and then that's what we do. So I meet them all, and then I have the survivors and think about who would go where. In the beginning, we do some preparation work of what it is to work with survivors, and then during the whole year we have monthly, because of Zoom we did sometimes twice a month short times because of Zoom of 40 minutes. So I'm in touch with them the entire year. But now we want to give the stage to Gizelle, but we can give a few,
Sure.
a minute to everybody to say something. And then
I began my interview with Julie. We were sitting in the kitchen, and I wanted to know how it affected him, how he was affected by this year. Okay, you want to repeat the answer?
Guys, if you can just, if possible, just to...
Sit on this, take this chair.
No, it's good. He said it's all...
This.
Okay. If you could introduce, your name is...
Julius.
And Julius, where are you from?
From a small town near Stuttgart in Germany.
Near Feldbach?
Near Feldbach.
What a small world, wow.
Why?
So I was there. There was a stamp exhibition, and my wife and I were there.
When were you there?
3 years ago. It was incredible.
Oh, you just went on a trip to...
A stamp exhibition. I've given it to you. The article.
Oh, really?
Julius, sure, this is incredible.
So my answer was that it was a very exciting year overall. A year where I've learned a lot from different people, from many people. But it was also a year with many ups and some downs. Not a lot of downs, but the downs were very mesmerizing, such as the little war that was ongoing in, what was it, April or something? May, which was disturbing to live through, because you don't know it from where we come from Germany. To experience it, it was sort of like next door. Yeah, that was basically my answer.
And was this the first time that you've come to Israel?
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever been to Israel.
And can I ask, how were you received by the survivors?
Very well. I've got one survivor. His name is George. He sees himself as sort of my grandfather for the year. One of the first things he said to me in the beginning was, since you don't have any family here, since they are all in Germany, we are your family now. So we take good care of you, which he does. We've spent Pesach for 3 days with his family up north, near the Kinneret. And the other one was also very receiving, very nice family. And they both...
Lara.
Okay.
Okay.
What is this? Okay. Clara? Viene, dello carambol.
And you were invited with the family up north,
Yeah.
and they made you feel part of the family?
Yeah, definitely, most definitely.
That's wonderful.
They all speak at least English fluently, so it's very easy to communicate with them. And he wants me to see as much of Israel as possible, and he's trying his best. He wants to take me to Mitzpe Ramon in the next few days, weeks, whatever. Yeah, the heat.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Even
David,
at night, it's like the desert, so at night.
cannot talk to you right.
And are you happy that you did this experience? That
Yeah,
you-
yeah, more than happy. As I said, I think I've learned so many things, so much about like individual stories, but also, of course, about the German history, about the
Clara?
Holocaust, about the National
You want a
Socialism,
towel?
which
Couple
is
of towels.
more than just important. So I'm more than happy to have done this.
Okay. Your name?
My name is Lucia.
Lucia.
Yeah, I'm from the north of Germany, and I'm spending the year with Gizelle every week at her house. And yeah, I've got the opportunity to go also to her
Could I
ceremony.
ask people to speak a little louder?
I went to the ceremony of the German ambassador that gave Gizelle the, I don't know the name in English.
It was an award?
Yeah, it was an award. And
Can you open the table, please? That's it. There's something underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
Both
Yeah, yeah.
sides.
No. Yes.
And the other side. Thank you. Fine.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
what shall I tell?
So how was the meeting with the German ambassador and that experience?
For me, it was very special to see how, because I got to know you so well, and I know that you were so, that it was a very big thing for you, and your speech was very moving, and I also was impressed of how well the ambassador was handling the situation and like giving room for like the recognition that it's not an easy thing for Gizelle to take because it's from the German state, and I think she handled it very well. And I was also very happy to meet all the family, all the friends, and yes, it was a very, very impressive night.
And can you just tell us all a little about the first encounter you had with Gizelle, and how did you feel meeting a survivor coming from Germany? Were you a bit apprehensive, nervous when you first came here?
Yes, I was a little bit nervous, but Gizelle was very kind and we sat on the balcony. We had some coffee and talked a little, and I think it made it very easy for me because Gizelle is so used to talk to people about the Holocaust. So yeah, I was very positively surprised how how kind she was and how loving she is to me, and I'm very happy about that.
And the family, they embraced you, I'm sure, because she's got a very special family.
Yeah, you've got a lot of family, so I haven't met everyone, but the ones I met, they were very, very nice. And I didn't meet so many because of Corona, but yeah.
And I just want to ask you your impressions of this year that you've had in Israel, and you happy that you did the year that you came?
Yeah, I mean, it was a special year, like hard times, but also very good times, and I'm very happy.
Okay. Who should we have next?
Jana.
Okay.
My name is Janne. I work with 2 elderly ladies that I visit, and it has been very turbulent in my case, because one of them wasn't feeling very well in the winter, and then had problems afterwards. But still, I got to experience both of their lives, and got to hear both of their stories, in different ways from both of them, but still their stories. And it was very, impressive to be able to talk to them and to just be with them on a personal level, because you don't get that opportunity that often anymore.
And can I ask, when the survivors first met with you, did you develop an instant connection, or did it take a bit of time?
Well, kind of both. So both of them were really, really nice when I first met them, and were both just receiving me with open arms, and from the beginning on very open with me. But of course it's still hard to really then form a genuine connection, because I always just kind of also felt weird listening to the stories and trying to relate to the stories, and then of course also being asked about my story, about my family and so on, and that made it a bit hard at the beginning to fully go into a relationship. But both of them are still very nice to me, and they're still very accepting and very open and loving, and yeah, I'm happy with them.
And looking back, you happy that you did this year, that you came here?
Yeah, very happy. I think it did a lot for me personally, just to be here for a year and to live a very different life, and to get to know these people I got to know here, and just overall experience all this, including the bad things. So.
I think it's important also to say that each of them have another volunteer project. Each has another volunteer project besides seeing the Holocaust survivors, working at Yad Vashem, and working at the Jewish Archives, and working at Gan Shikumi. And Lawrence works at another a school for physically and mentally challenged. I'm sorry, I mixed up. Lawrence is at Yad Vashem, and Julius is with the school for physically and mentally challenged older kids or young adults. Correct? They're called children.
Something similar to what Lucy is doing.
Yeah,
with adults.
Older children.
No, not only older children. My school also starts from the ages of 6 until 21. So kids and young adolescents. Yeah.
So that was new for you?
Yeah.
You haven't experienced any
No.
such experience?
Just was thrown into cold water without any experience. But it was. I think I adapted quickly enough, and I have also had a lot of help from the other stuff. Yeah.
So you got something out of the experience that you had here by chance. You feel you carry this home and you can use that experience.
I think so. I hope so. To be more precise. Yeah.
Okay. And now we have our fourth volunteer.
Yeah. Actually,
What's your name?
Sonja.
Sonia, yes.
Sonja, and where are you from, Sonja?
I'm from Berlin, and I don't work at AMGA, but I also work with old people in a nursing home, and my main project is Yad Vashem, so I also learned a lot about the Holocaust this year. And yeah, it's really interesting work. I don't know.
And can I just ask, and I think this is for all four, did you learn a little bit about the Holocaust before you came to Israel? Did you know a little bit about?
Of course.
Is it part of the school curriculum?
Yeah, of course. So we already knew a lot, I think, but I think it changes really the moment you get to know people that lived at that time and that experienced it. It's very different experience, and also just being in Israel is very, very special, I'd say. And also, maybe I can talk for the others in that point, but at Yad Vashem, in school you learn more about like the general history, but at Yad Vashem I learned really personal stories from both sides, also from the perpetrator sides, but it's a very different view on history. Yeah.
And have you met Gizelle before, or is this the first time?
I've met Gizelle on our last meeting, but
We met in April after Yom
Yeah.
Shoah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
invited
when
Sonja's roommate.
I live with
There's a roommate, and they asked him, so she joined us then. April we met first, and now we're here again.
Now, I want to just ask a general question. Robbie tells me that you would like to hear about my experiences. What really would you like to know? What aspects would be interesting to you to hear?
I think last time when we were here in April, you started telling us about like what happened before the war and kind of your childhood and what happened leading up to the war, but we never got to the rest of the story. So we.
You mean the real tzarot, the real problems?
It sounds very weird, but I'd just like to hear the whole story and not just a part of it, kind of.
Vignettes, episodes, or would you want a linear? I usually tell a linear story. That's why you didn't hear the rest.
Possibly, yeah.
But there's no time, because I could probably spend 20 hours to tell every detail of every story. But I could tell you vignettes, skip things and tell things which. Would you like that?
And Gita,
Including, maybe.
you can take, yeah. Come.
Should I
We can
take it off?
yeah, please. Ah, wonderful.
Okay. Yes, I think vignettes will do, but I would think that people come to me last week. Last week somebody called me and told me that he heard me talk somewhere, and he realizes that I am from a city called Hust. Yes, I am a city called Hust. That used to be in Czechoslovakia, and then we were occupied by Hungary, who was fascistic and who was already allied with Hitler before they occupied our city. And when they came, the Hungarians came in to occupy our area, because Czechoslovakia, which was created at the end of World War I, and that was 18 or 19, that's when Czechoslovakia, having been under Austro-Hungarian Empire before, the language was German and Hungarian, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire lost World War I, and all the little countries that had been occupied by Austro-Hungary wanted to nationalize themselves, to be independent. So, for instance, Czechoslovakia is composed of Czechia and Moravia and Slovakia and Carpathorus, which was our part of the country. And when Hitler marched into Czechia 1939, Czechoslovakia fell apart. After 20 years of existence in a very good country, was very democratic. The president was a wonderful person and was very good to the Jews and everybody. There was no obvious felt anti-Semitism. And so our lives were good, and we had a good existence, we had a good business my father had, so it was fine. But when the Hungarians came in, my father, who was about close to 40 years old, 42, 45, he cried with tears when the Hungarian army marched into our town. He never told us why he cried, but he cried. And he really, really was afraid of Hungary, because he must have had very traumatic experiences under Hungary, under World War I. And this came to the fore. Maybe I'll tell you that particular moment when we realized how bad it was for him. We lived in a town of 20,000 population, where there were 8,000 Jews. And there were some Ukrainian people of Ukrainian background, some of Hungarian background, and and the Jews had all the businesses that were in existence in my town were all in Jewish hands. It was so. Jews for thousands of years were not allowed in Europe to acquire land and to work the land. Not Jews. Jews were, explain this, how this came to me, how I integrated this story. I was several times in Spain, and just to see, one was under a professor, a Hebrew University professor, whose specialty was Spanish Jews. And is very knowledgeable, and he took us to places that nobody goes to when they go on a trip. And he took us northeastern Spain, Aragonia and Catalan, where Barcelona is. And they took us to an open area with a mountainous area. There was a big mountain, and on top of it lives the landlord who owns this entire section. There were in the Middle Ages, there were no kings at that point there. The aristocracy owned this land, and the people who, I think they call them Esnes, E-S-N-E. You hear the word? Did you study? I don't know where I studied it. But these were the people who tended the land. They were the peasants who worked the land for the landlord, who lived up. He had a Armon palace on top, and the peasants lived downstairs, down underneath in the land, and one row under the palace was a row of buildings, and that was what they called Huderia, which means the Jewish section. Jews lived close to the landlord. Why was it so? Because the Jews could not work the land, and they weren't allowed to do agricultural work, and they helped the landlord financially to get the money, to know sort of an accountant who knows that they will have to pay these peasants, and he will need the money, and where he gets the money and how he pays it. He was helping out, and they were living from this. And come 1940, 39, 40 and on, Jews stayed in the business world, okay? And so then I understood why in Hus, for instance, where there were more than a third of Jews in a city where we had 3 big synagogues and at least 7 churches of every sort, Greek Orthodox and Catholic and Reformist, every kind, and schools. It was a big city with 20,000 people, right? And my father had 2 businesses, and other businesses were run by other Jewish people. The only businesses that were run by non-Jews, by the Hungarians or the whatever, the Ukrainians, were those businesses that cater to the non-Jewish population, like food stores and like clothing stores for those people, okay? And one day, the Hungarians came and took over Karpatalus because the Czechoslovakia fell apart, didn't exist as a country anymore, and Hitler encouraged Hungary, the ruler who was called Horthy, Nicholas Horthy, he encouraged him to occupy these territories, part of Romania, part of Hungary. Suddenly, there was a tremendous change, and one day, let me tell you one incident. I don't know whether I told you, Lucy. It was announced that the kids can go back to school because the Czech schools were no longer, and the Czech people who were brought in to create teachers for the schools and people to run the Czech offices were sent home, and now we are Hungary. And so Hungarian school starts. And I went first day to school, and I'm sitting in the classroom, Jewish kids and Ukrainian kids and Hungarian kids and kids with the Hirelux, Jewish kids who went to a Jewish school, and 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, they come from the Jewish school into the public school. They have to take off their kippah. They're not allowed to wear a kippah. And we were all there. And somebody throws a little...
And what grade is this?
I was 12 years old. We didn't go to high school. Jewish kids didn't go to high. Most kids didn't go to high school because, for one thing, you needed an entry examination because it was a very high-level school. But the Jewish kids didn't go because we had to attend school on Shabbat, on Saturday, and this was not allowable because our fathers went to a synagogue on Shabbat, which was the holiday of the week, and for the kids to come home with a bag, with our bags from school, while my father is coming home from the synagogue. Do you have anything to say about that?
No.
Did you go to school on Sabbath?
Never.
No. Okay, so we couldn't go to school. So I was in 7th grade, let's say, or something. We had another sort of school where we learned a little bit of algebra maybe, and foreign languages we learned, and we learned history, and it was very nice. But it wasn't a real middle-level school. And so we're sitting, waiting, and somebody throws a little piece of paper into my bag, from the bag. And it falls, I pick it up and read it, and it says, "Death to the Jews." First day in school, the teacher is not yet there. And I throw it away. It didn't matter anything to me because throughout my life, we always heard some of the non-Jewish kids shouting after my father, or people who lived like my father, who looked like my father. He had a beard, he wore a hat and a suit always. He was a businessman. And they would yell at him, "Jew, stinking Jew," always. And I remember in the winter time, when it was very cold, we had very cold winters, and we had in the business a tall, slender oven, which was wood-heated. Wood was prepared from the summer for all winter to heat the oven, to heat the house. And he would stand outside the store and see kids, these Ukrainian kids or kids who yelled at him, stinking Jew, he would tell them, come in and sit here because it's warm and you won't bother me. And he gave him tea and piece of bread and something to eat. Do you understand? Okay. So, and I am now in the school, and the teacher comes in, and she's now speaking in Hungarian, and everybody can speak Hungarian. Most of the kids could speak. We couldn't speak Czech, but we learned Czech from age 5, because that was a strange language. We never were part of the Czech Republic. But so, the teacher comes in and says, welcome, and how nice, now we learn Hungarian, and fine, everything fine. And then she says, where are the Jewish kids? We were there. And who's that? Yes. Babuzi?
Yeah.
Come here.
No,
Okay. My cousin. And so she said, where are the Jewish kids? And she does like this, and we stand up, and she says, you see, there's a door here. All of you, please go out. There will not be any learning for Jewish kids anymore. 12 years old. And we didn't. For 30 years, I didn't learn anything from age 12 to 40, about 43. When I had 3 children, I lived in America. I had an 11-year-old daughter, the 7-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old little boy whom I took to kindergarten the first day. And from the kindergarten where I deposited my son, I went straight to Brooklyn College. This is our college, our university system, and signed up to go to university. I didn't spend one day, not one day, in high school. Nothing. Since age 12 to age 42, 43, I didn't go to school. But when I came to America, the first summer that I came, I didn't speak English yet, and
Then wait a minute, how old were you when you got to the States? How old were you when you arrived in the States?
in the States, 1948, 21 years old. Yes, I was working in the summer in a resort, in a beach resort, in a hotel room where I was.
And you just learned English ever formally, or you just picked it up?
I remember having read one book, a wonderful book, The Birth of a Nation. Have you read it by any chance? Would be like you to have read it. He was part of the committee that helped arrange Israel's country. And but that summer I was working in a hotel.
But how did you learn English? Just by working and speaking
By
with people?
picking it up, and then
Never formal.
I read a book. By the time I finished the book, I knew how to speak English. So listen to this. I was told by somebody that they are giving a test which is called the what was it was a what was it called?
Matriculation, sir?
It was a test that was what is it called? That it was mostly for black people who never studied in high school. They went to high school, but they never learned anything. And so this was it was a test to replace regular high school graduation.
Like,
And I
like
went
have a
in,
booth.
and as I went in, there's a black young man goes into and I went to take it. And next to me, a young man went in, a black man, and I said to him, "Excuse me, could you tell me whether indeed George Washington was the first American president?" He says, "I think yes." That's what I know of American history when I took the test. And I came through with pretty good scores. And I went to college, and I finished. I studied psychology, and I did pretty well. I got some kind of $100 medal because why did I get the foreign student? I wasn't a citizen yet. Anyway, okay. And then when I finished my college degree, they announced that I can get a doctorate. There was a program called BA, which is Bachelor of Arts, until doctorate, PhD. And I said, I am going there. And everybody in my family, my friends said, "Are you crazy? You have 3 growing children and they're soon going to college." No, I'm going to do this. And I did, and I got a doctorate in psychology. And I never thought, I loved school. I loved to study. I didn't care, whether I will ever use this. I never thought I would use the degree. I mean, I was an adult with 3 big children. Okay, so then what happened?
I want to go back to, we went forward and now we go backwards to...
Yes, so
to,
what happened?
Hungary.
Okay, so the Hungarians
in 44.
occupied us. No, not yet. They occupied us in 1939, and the Hungarian ruler, Horthy, refused to listen to Hitler, who urged him to take the Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz, to allow the Germans to come in and and take the Jewish population to the camps. And Hitler was extremely angry because in 1939, he started World War II, and and immediately, like a week after he came and occupied the country, he went through all of Europe, occupied almost every country. A week after he occupied that country, he started burning synagogues and books, or holy books, and they took the people and created ghettos and took the people to their death, to the various camps. Okay, but we stayed under Horthy for 5 years until almost the end of the war. We stayed in our homes. But what happened there? So I told you the first story, where they shut us out from school. The second incident was that one day, very soon after they came in, the Hungarians, maybe 1940, a person, a non-Jew, came into the store and tells my father, I was sent from the municipality, from City Hall, and I would like to stay here in our store. I would like to stay here. And my father said, yes, why not? He had a sense of humor. I mean, this was our store. And he asked my father to help him a little bit, to teach him how to sell. I mean, these people never owned a business.
What kind of store was it?
What?
What kind of store did your father have?
He had two businesses. One was in Ivrit they call it a pundak. You know what's a pundak?
Everything? I don't know.
People come in, for instance, for once a week there was shuk, big shuk. People come in to sell their cows and calves and everything, and they also, in the winter, they would, especially those of the Ukrainian origin, they were cutting down. The only single industry in our area was lumber. And we had very high, beautiful mountains, beautiful areas. And the people who lived in the mountains, very pretty, up in the mountains, little houses. And they would cut down the trees, tie them into a raft, like 6, 7 big trees. They cut them together, put them on the river, and this one man stood on it. It was raining and snowing and hailing and everything. And he was traveling on the raft to Hust, where trucks were waiting for the trees, and took them to sawmills to cut the trees into boards and supply the lumber dealers here. Okay? And so they would come in to a business like my father had, to have a drink, or they were completely wet. They took off their coats and they to get a bite, or not food, we didn't cook. It was more like to drink a glass of wine, or this is most of we had about five such stores in Kut, and they were all owned by religious Jews somehow. It was a legitimate, normal store. And, okay. The second business that my father owned, he was the only one in town who imported mineral water in bottles. And this was because the pharmaceutical industry was not developed yet, and there were no medications, so people would drink if people had some stomach problems of one kind or another. They would go to the pharmacy and buy a bottle of water, mineral water. Excellent, excellent. And okay, so this is what we were selling. We were the only one, and the water was kept in our cellar, where they had a cellar which was very cold. We didn't have refrigerators. So all our food was kept in the cellar on the floor. Milk. We got milk which was not pasteurized. And so they boiled it, had to boil it. They have to pasteurize it. And then we put it in the pot in the basement, and the water was there on shelves, and it was a very good business. And then suddenly the Hungarians announced that they are taking away every Jew's license to operate the business. From one day to the other, stores would close down. Every store. My father had to lock down the cellar. He could drink the water, but he couldn't sell it. And one day, my father called us and says, "Children, we have no more livelihood." And I was 12 or 13 years old. Leave it there. I was very, very young, and I understood. I remember the day I understood what it means. Children, we have no longer a livelihood, no parnasa. It was horrible. I was saying, who's going to put bread on the table? My father was a Zionist. Did you hear the word Zionist? Somebody who lived in Europe or in America or in South Africa or everywhere, and he craved to be in Israel because that's our legal place to be in. And my father was one of the few religious Jews who wanted to go to Palestine to work with his hands. He had a very good business. We lived very comfortably with a beautiful home and beautiful clothes and a beautiful food that we served, and always people who came to eat. And that was really a Jewish custom. Every Friday night, when my father went to the synagogue and came home, and we had a festive dinner, my father brought home with him a person, a man usually, and we call him the guest. And this was almost every week. And when he didn't bring somebody like that, my mother would ask, "What happened tonight? We don't have guests anymore." A person who was poor and lived somewhere in the village and had to do something in the city, in Hust, and he went to the synagogue. And he didn't have where to sleep and where to eat. And we know who was a stranger in this synagogue, because we knew everybody who was not, who was local. And so you asked him, where are you from? And he said he's from, I don't know what village. Do you have where to eat? No. So come with me. And then somebody else asked him, do you have where to sleep? Come with me. And also we had a rabbi in Hust, and he had a yeshiva. Yeshiva is a rabbinical school. And every Jew would have liked to have his son learn in a yeshiva. We need to learn the Torah, the Bible, and the Talmud, and everybody has to know that, even though he doesn't have money. And the yeshiva was so poor, the rabbi, that they couldn't provide for the students food and lodging. Today, most of the yeshivas do provide. You have to pay something, but the people are better well off than they used to be before. So when a father brought, at the beginning of the year, his son to school, to a yeshiva, he had a list of people who can afford to invite somebody for a meal, and they ask for days. They call it days, meaning he asked my mother, could you provide a meal, one meal a week for my son? Of course I can. We had 3 boys coming every week for a meal. My mother made sure that he gets a lot of protein and good food, and so these were customs in our town. Very nice custom. And okay, so what happened? So my father's store was taken away. Everybody's store was taken away. And what happened to all the other Jews, the 8,000 Jews, when they shut down their stores? Black market. Everybody did some black market. What else can they do? There was no kind of work to be had in our town. People sent food to places where they already had, the food was under ration, but they survived. Many of them, many Jews wound up in prison because they did the black market. But what can they do? What can they do? So this is how we live. The third thing that happened is that Jewish boys were called up to do some forced labor under the Hungarian army. And so this was a brand new thing. And then when the war broke out in Russia, all of these boys were taken up to Russia and the Ukraine, and they were working very, very hard in extreme cold weather. They didn't have uniforms. They wore their clothes from Hust. Hust wasn't especially cold. And they were digging the frozen land. They have to dig. That was Babutzi? Okay. They had to dig ditches, and they had to dig big mass graves where they shoot Jews. And what happened in our town, one Sabbath morning, when the men were sitting in the synagogue, the police went into Jewish homes, and they said, everybody who is here today, if there was a guest who came to visit the family, or a child who visits the grandfather, each one prepare a baggage of some food for a few days, some clothing for a few days, and go to the railway station. And they went to the railway station, and they were entrained, and about a week later, when the train got full, they went off, and they arrived in the Ukraine. And when the train arrived in Ukraine, every single person who was in the train was taken by the SS to a mass grave and shot into the grave. And very, very few people. There were some who were shot and died, and there were some people who were shot, but they did not die. And they were lying under the dead people, and they were shaking, and they were screaming. They were alive for a few days, lying under the dead bodies of others. About 2 or 3 people altogether managed to get out. And it was a cousin of mine's son, is 14 years old, and he climbed out. He was 14 years old, he was strong, and he climbed out over the bodies of 6 siblings, younger kids, and the father and the mother, dead bodies. He climbed up because he wanted to live. He came out and managed to write a letter to his grandfather, who was my uncle, save me. And he wrote in a letter, this is where we are, and this is where we arrived, and I don't know what's going to happen to us, but save us. We couldn't, it took tens of years until we figured out how a 14-year-old kid who was in a yeshiva all his life, and he doesn't know how to, he doesn't have paper and a pen and an envelope and a stamp, how can he send a letter to his grandfather? But those forced labor camp boys who were taken from their homes, our sons, children, who went to do the forced labor under the Hungarian army, saw this whole murder, the whole pogrom. They were watching it. They were very close to it. And these boys were allowed to write letters home. So they met this kid and they helped him. Nobody saved him. But then nobody saved his grandfather, grandmother, and his own old relative. Everybody was killed in this whole story. And the Germans, the Einsatztruppen, that's what they were called, Einsatztruppen. It were the German SS who were specially trained to carry out these massacres. Germany. They finished, and then they left by car to another place to kill some more Jews. 20,000 people from our area were killed like this, killing them in a mass grave. And the people who were for days alive and called and begged, nobody listened. Okay. Now, this was around 1940, 41, 42. Hitler was experimenting in how to kill more Jews in a shorter time and cheaper. This was one of these experiments, mass graves. But we hear of a lot of mass graves all over the Europe. Okay? And by 1943, Hitler announced that Europe is Judenrein. He didn't have anyone to kill anymore. He's free of Jews. 1943. We were still at home, in our homes. And it was terrible for us. It was terrible. But 1944, March 19, the SS marched into Hungary. What happened was that Hitler went crazy, that he managed to get rid of all of Europe's Jews. And the Hungarian who asked Hitler to be part of his Axis countries. You know, Axis countries? What do you call an Axis country in German?
Like allies. They were allies. Allies.
No, the Allies were the Allies.
But they were like...
B'nai Brit. No.
No, they have a specific name. I think it's Achsen.
Axis countries.
Achsenmächte is the German.
Okay. He asked Hitler could he join him, because Mussolini, Italy was already part.
Just going to the toilet.
And so, and he didn't listen to him. Horthy didn't listen to Hitler. He asked him to be part of his allies,
Yeah.
but he doesn't listen to him, and the Jews are still sitting in our homes. So what he did was,
Sitting in your homes and living from still
no, we
black
lived
market?
in our beautiful home. I will tell you. I told you black market, okay? Because most of the people were selling in Hungary proper. See, there was Hungary, a country, a legitimate country, until 1939, when he occupied part of Romania, part of Czechoslovakia, part of Yugoslavia, part of Slovakia. Do you understand? So we called that the real Hungary, Mamaland. Mamaland. It was real Hungary. Our country was not Mamaland. We knew how to speak Hungarian. Hungarian is my mother tongue, because my mother grew up under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where the language was Hungarian. So, but in Mamaland already there were already food was on what do you call it, when you have to restricted agricultural products like sugar and flour and I don't know what else. So people found out in our area, and we had those products. So we sent it. There were all kinds of ways by train, and they sent it to Hungary, and they paid more for it than we paid. So that's how they made some money to live on. My father sent. Oh, what I wanted to tell about my father, that he was a Zionist, that he got himself a so-called certificate. That means that a pass some of the organizations, Jewish organizations, Zionist organizations, wanted the Jews to come to Israel, so they sold him tickets, permits by the English, by the British, to come to Palestine. We could have gone. And so my father was ready to go. And my mother said, I don't want to go to Palestine. We have it very good here. We were very comfortable, really comfortable. I'm not going. So my father said, no, she doesn't want to come. She doesn't want. It was a very difficult time in Palestine. It was very difficult. But my father was ready to go. So what did he do? He sent my two older sisters to Budapest, the capital city of Hungary, to learn something. The older sister was some 21, 22 years old, and the younger one was about 19, and they went to Budapest to learn a trade. Because if we go to Israel, at one point, it will be possible. It will be possible to go to Palestine. And they learned the trade and started working and bought themselves nice clothes, and we were in touch with them. And then, as I said, 1944, a year before the end of the war, Hitler invited Horthy. Hitler invited his partner, and to himself, and he entertained him. And Hitler called up Hungary. There were plenty of fascists in Hungary, and said, open the gates to Hungary and let our people go in. And they came in. And this was 3 weeks before our big holiday, Passover, that the Hungarians came in. And my father sent a telegram to the girls, come home right away for Passover. And the girls wrote back, sent back a telegram, we are coming. And Edith, my oldest sister, goes down to the railway station, one of Budapest's railway stations, to find out whether it's okay to come with suitcases, whether the train is running as normal. And when she comes there, it was full of people, Jews, who wanted to go home for Pesach. And the police came down and began to identify those people. And they all had letter J or something for Jew. And they took them into an existing concentration camp in Hungary. It was called, anyway, it's an old existing prison which they held open for the Hungarians, Jews, to be used. And my sister was arrested with all those other Jewish people. Who were those, all the lot of other people? They are the people who lost their businesses, who lost their jobs, and there was nothing to be had locally, so they yes, so they went to Budapest. It's easier to to be in another city than in your own town, because your own town, every Jew knows every Jew, and every non-Jew knows every Jew. So that you cannot find some kind of work, because the Jews were a non-accepted entity. Anyway, so my sister, the other sister, Helen, she realized that Edith doesn't come home. She went to the railway station. They wanted to pack and come in the morning. And she heard the radio in the night, in the evening, and it says that there was a raid at the railway station. And she figured out that Edith is no more free. And she didn't want the parents to know. She didn't want the parents to know that Edith is arrested. And we got about 3 days later a letter, an open letter, with the stamp of this concentration camp. And it says, I'm here and I'm fine, you don't worry about me because I have everything I need. What did she have? Whatever she wore, that's what she had with her. And so we realized it. And Erev Pesach comes. It's the day before Passover. We have in the night, you probably experienced it, the big ceremony of the Passover. And my father goes into the synagogue in the morning. And my mother is beginning to get ready for the big ceremony. And she's very nervous because we didn't hear from the kids. And she says to me, go and look for your father. And I go out and I go through the shul, or the 3 synagogues. Everything is closed already. It's coming close to noon. And everybody, no one on the street. You don't see a person on the street. No Jew, no Jew. Everybody's afraid of what's happening. And I come back and I stand in front of my house so that when my father comes home, he must pass me by and I'll find out what's happening. I didn't want to go into the house to make my mother more nervous. And suddenly, no one is on the street, and I see a man walking in my direction, and I don't identify him from a distance. And then suddenly I see the man comes directly to me, and he comes close, and I see that it's my father. So what happened? No beard. He didn't wear a hat. He wore a little sports cap. I don't know where he could get it. The stores are closed. But he went and he found a barber to shave his beard. The first time in his life. You know, these men wear beards. Since the beard starts growing, he has it growing. And he was embarrassed, and he looked like he wants to cry. To come to be part of the Jews without. But this, we realized that this was one of the things that he had a trauma from the Hungarians in 1914. And he looked very, very sad. It was terrible. But where are the children? So we went home, and my mother is cooking, and we sit in the kitchen and we look out into the backyard, who's coming in, and where are our children? We know that Edith is somewhere arrested, but where is my other sister? And she came in. Helen came in the afternoon, and my father runs out to her and throws himself on the floor, holds her legs, and says, "Thank God that at least you are with us." And next day, so this was it. The night was the Seder night, that big night. I do not remember anything. Everything is totally blotted out. Normally, you know, it's a whole evening. I don't know whether you keep this whole ceremony. And I don't remember where we sat and what we ate and what we talked about. And my father tells the story, and always there's something new, something interesting. Nothing do I remember. Next morning he goes to his big ceremony in the synagogue, and the Germans announced that they want 200 men, strong men. And we don't have the young people to send them to work, to do some hard work, because they were taken up to Russia. And my father and his cohorts went with them. We didn't know whether they walked. There are plenty of places around Khust, forests and little mountains, and they went. In the afternoon, I went down to the street. They haven't come back yet. And the street is full of, all the streets are full of people, kids, the children, the parents, the sisters, brothers, to wait for the men to come back, right? And they came back. All came back. And we asked them, "What did you do there?" And they said, "Nothing." I remember, young as I was, I said, how vile, how bad can you get? They didn't need their work. They didn't need them there. They know it's a holiday. They know they have families. Why do they need to take those people? And all day long they were sitting and they were thinking they are going to be killed. They thought, the people themselves, the men themselves, my father, thought he will be killed now. And we thought they will be killed. I'm telling you, I grew old in one day. I'm surprised I didn't get white hair. To think of this, it's pure evil, nothing else. Because if they made me work for 7 months under the most cruel circumstances, because they needed the work, because the German men were all on the front fighting wars. So they had to take Jewish kids who were 15 years old and 13 years old to work, machine work, metal work. Okay, I understood they needed the work, so my father worked in a coal mine. I'll tell you about my father also. but if they don't need it, they don't need the work. They didn't need it. They just wanted to do evil to the Jewish people. Why? Okay. After that week of Passover, the holiday lasts a week, and after the holiday was over, they told us to lock the house and prepare our baggages and go to the big synagogue, where they just opened up the big synagogue for us all the Jewish people. By that time we were about 7,000 people, and we went into this, we went into the synagogue, and I have one memory of this synagogue. Yesterday, we had a prayer day there. So it's a big prayer, you know. And they were sitting, there were pews. But today, a day later, they threw out all the chairs, all the seats, and nothing was there. And I remember an old man sitting against that wall, like this, sitting in the room, and with a big book, big wide beard, and he's learning from a Gemara, from one of the big books. And 2 seats further, a woman is feeding, breastfeeding a baby. And you know, religious people are shy, and not shy, they call it modest. Yes, they don't expose themselves. And this man is learning there, and there is the woman sitting there breastfeeding the baby. But we didn't stay long, and after 3 days, they created a ghetto for us, and the ghetto was they found 3 streets where mostly Jewish people lived. It was around the centrum of town, and just one side of the street, and the houses were very small and low, and they had maybe 2 bedrooms. Even if they had 12 children, they had 2 bedrooms. And they put in 4 to 5 families into each such house. Can you imagine? 4 or 5 new families to an apartment with 2 bedrooms, 1 kitchen. Every family had to cook for their children. 1 toilet, and it's not where you pull down the water toilet. No, it was outside in the backyard. There was no running water. Extremely narrow, congested situation, but nobody was complaining. Nobody was. My sister when we were still at home 2-3 days ago, my sister, who came from Budapest with her own suitcase and her sister's suitcase, she begged my father to dig a hole somewhere in the yard and put our stuff. Our house was full of everything that we had was there in that house. And everything that we brought, my parents acquired in 25 years of married life, was in the house. And my sister couldn't stand it. And she said, dig a hole and put things in it, nobody will notice. And my father said, no, I'm not going to hide things. If we live, we'll have everything we had before. He was right. And if we don't live, who cares who has our things? And so then when we went into the ghettos, my sister ran out of the ghetto. It was easy. It wasn't impossible to go out. Nobody looked after us. But she went to the house to wanted to see what happened in the 2-3 days that we haven't been there. She steps in front of the house, and in front of our house there is a horse and buggy sitting right in front of our house. And there's a little window about this high and this wide from the street into our cellar. And they removed this little window, and she sees that inside the basement, the cellar, there is a man, and outside near the horse and buggy, there is also a man. And the man, yes, what my father did, because my sister was nudging him to hide things. What he did in the last moment before we left the house, he ran up. We lived on the second floor, where the first floor was our business, and then we had a staircase, and the floor above was our apartment. Very nice apartment. And my father kept running up and down into the cellar, full hands of whatever he can get hold of. From the closet, my mother's had her own wedding gifts, that she married 25 years earlier. And it was in the closet with a nice little blue bow. Still not open, still we didn't use it yet. And curtains and tablecloths and everything that we had, he ran down and threw it into the cellar. And now my sister Helen sees that the man inside lifts up these things and gives him, and he puts them into the droshka, and she came home in a hysterical cry. Everything, they took everything. Okay, so we were in the ghetto about 5 weeks, and then one day we heard that there were 3 ghettos. Ghetto number 1, 2, and 3, and it was all one side of a street, and the first ghetto already left, and the second ghetto left yesterday, and we are the 3rd ghetto, and we go through the city where we had lived, and we see a little, my kindergarten, where I started kindergarten. and a little yeshiva where people studied, and some neighbors in a gorgeous garden with flowers. And we went slowly to the railway station, and we had to sit down and wait for the wagon to come. And I won't tell you the story, but I want to tell you what happened. So we traveled, the wagon came, and the wagon was there. You probably saw it. In the museums, in the Yad Vashem, there is a wagon sitting outside. It's not a big, like maybe from here to there. And here, in the front part, are two buckets. One bucket with water to drink, and the other bucket was the toilet. Nothing around it. If you have to go, you have to go. And you go in front of everybody to the toilet. And where do we sit? First of all, everybody has a baggage. Everybody has a big package to hold some of the... We could not bring any luxuries, nothing. Maybe a couple of pairs of underwear or a couple of dresses, and no luxuries. I don't know whether we did or not. I don't recall having brought pictures. My father for sure had the things in which he prays. The talit, the talit, the shawl, prayer shawl, and the religious subjects that they have to have. Every morning, so what happened to our baggages? They told us when we went into the wagons to put them down under us, and we'll sit on it. But you cannot sit close to the buckets because the train many times stops, and the water and the dreck splashes on you. So they sit a little further. Altogether, the wagons contained up to 95 people. 95 people sitting in this wagon. And we had some less. We didn't have all the 95. But the men got up every morning, whether they believed or not, they got up and they prayed. They had the quorum, They have to have, I don't know whether they didn't always have the quorum. The quorum has to be 10 people, counting, 10 people who are past 13 years old. And I don't know how many men we had, but we prayed all, and it was very hard. And we arrived in Auschwitz, and we saw through a little window. There is a big sign which says Auschwitz-Birkenau. No idea what that means. And then we went in, and then there was the first selection where they selected out. Is there a picture? A photograph, colored photograph.
This one over here?
No, not that one.
No,
Yes, you can pass it around. Now you see the big building? This is the entrance to hell. Worse than hell. This is the entrance to Birkenau. And I'll explain.
If you could just turn it around. Yeah.
group of kids. So the selection, and I think I'll finish soon, the selection was done. That was the most horrible thing. The train stops. We were in the end of the train stops, and at the beginning of the train, they put up a little table and some chairs, and about 6, 7 high-ranking SS officers were sitting there. And you can assume that either some of the people there, some of these officers, or all of them were doctors, medical doctors. Why do they have to be doctors? Because there are experiments, human experiments done in Auschwitz. We know all about it. I mean, you can put it, just put it. And so, what is the selection? We never heard the word, we never knew what this means. The selection meant that if we had, let's say, 2,500 people who arrived in our train to Auschwitz, 90% of the people who arrive in Birkenau will be killed that same night. So if 2,500 people had arrived, then maybe 2,200 will be dead by tomorrow morning. Now, what actually happens? We arrive in Birkenau, we're extremely exhausted. The door opens from the outside, and in front of every wagon there are 2 men in the Auschwitz uniform, the striped uniform. And they open the door, and we want to breathe some air, and they start yelling, heraus, 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 schnell, schnell. And they speak to us in German, in Yiddish, and in Polish. They don't know that we don't speak Polish. They're Hungarians. And they give us their hands, because the train is high, over 1 meter high, and we cannot, there are families. Everybody there is together with his family, father and mother and siblings, okay? And little kids or big kids, families. And these Jews, these people, give us their hands, and they jump down, and one after the other, and there's a big chaos, a lot of people. And the kids, you hear kids crying, where is Imam, where is Abba, where is father, where are they? Because they were together. But when they jump, they're not together. They jump alone, and they don't see where the father may be there and the kid may be here. Doesn't see him, and the kid is crying. It's a bad situation. And we don't know what's happening. Okay? So I jump out, I think almost last. There's no one left after me. And I lean against the train, and instinctively I turn my face to the front of the train, to the direction where the front is. And I see maybe 5 meters before me, a little old lady with a black scarf tied nicely around her head. Next to her is her daughter, Flori, with 2 little kids, 2-year-old kid and a 4-year-old kid, boy. And I was playing with these kids until a very short time ago, because these are our closest neighbors, and the lady was my mother's friend, and her daughter went to school with my daughter and my sister, and we were very, very close. And with these kids, also they lived next door. And, okay. So, and suddenly, while I'm looking and they're walking that way, with their back to me, walking that way, then I knew 90% of everyone who arrived on this train had to be dead by tomorrow. Now, but how did it happen? How did they get selected? So, on this stretch in front of the train, there are young SS people who go and see people passing them by and says, no, you go that way, you go this way, and you go that way. They direct them. The SS, the high SS, taught them how to select the people. And so those people who were going to the gas chambers are already there. And when I come down and I don't see people around me, where's my father, and where's my mother, and where's my sister? I don't see them in front of me. But suddenly I open my eyes. About 5 meters from me stand the whole line of women, only women, meaning kids from 12, 13 years on until about 35. That was the ideal for the Germans, to select women until 15 years, until 35 years. And I see among these women, there's my sister with my mother. Thank God. Okay? And I run over to them, and I see that this is the lane that goes to the gas chamber. In the middle here is a bunch of men about in their 50s, very strong men from Host. I recognize them because they're from my town. And then I see my father there also. And I said, these were people who were chosen to work because they are strong, like you could see. They're strong people. Thank God my father is going to work. I don't know anything about this place. I have no idea about gas chamber, about nothing. But this made sense somehow. And I ran over and I am with my mother and my sister, thank God. And then what happened is that these people already went away, and they took away my father's group to put them to sleep somewhere. And then they take us, or the women, and we walk about 20 minutes, and we arrive at the shower room, where the ceiling is pretty low and full of shower heads. And then they announce to take off our shoes and watch them. Okay? So we take off our shoes because you'll need them. So put them down and remember where you put them. Okay? And then they say, undress. Take off your clothes. And we are standing there with open mouth. We couldn't believe it. I mean, get undressed. My mother should get undressed in front of strangers. For us, we never heard of anything like it. And, okay, and then they start yelling, we spoke to you and you don't listen to us. You must listen when we speak. So, we undress and we are standing there all naked and the water comes down and it wasn't too terrible, it wasn't too hot or too cold. Fine, fine, fine. And then the water shuts off and we stand there and we have to get dried up. And after a while, a whole bunch of people, men and women, come with clippers and take all our hair, body hair down. And then we burst out in laughter because we couldn't identify each other. Not even my sister could I recognize. You can't imagine how strange it is to look at a human being who is an adult without hair on his body. And so we finished and they tell us to make a straight line, one person after the other. And on the side of this line there are mounds of clothes, dresses, and they throw to every person a dress. They don't measure, is it too big or too small or too what. Just they throw them a dress, us a dress, and we, nothing, no underwear, nothing more, just a dress. And we have to pick up our clothes, shoes, and walk out, and they put us into a barrack. And okay, that night they weren't ready for everybody, and we were in a barrack where the floor wasn't made yet. It's just earth. There's no floor, there are no beds, no. And so we sit down, we were made to sit down like this, and the next person sits here, and next here and here, here. There's a whole row of women, and another row and another row. You cannot move, you cannot turn right or left or back. You cannot close your eyes. It's so uncomfortable. We cannot move. And yes, we also got a piece of bread when we entered Birkenau. And okay, so that's how we spent the night. And next morning, 4 o'clock, they woke us to sail up and roll call. And there is no place to sit down. No place. There is only gravel on the floor, no grass, no trees, no birds, no flies. Can you imagine? The whole summer, not a fly, only death. You know, even the animals felt that this is not a good place to be here. And that's it. And then we stayed here 5 months, twice a day having roll calls. and the SS in a barrack, each barrack, there were 1,200 women, and the bed is board about 3 meters long and about almost 2 meters wide, and on this 3 levels, 3 layers, and on each layer there were 12 women sleeping on our side like this. And when you wanted to if you wanted to turn over at night, somebody had to get up, and so that we have enough room to turn over on the other side. And we were there for 5 months like this. Every morning you get up at 4 o'clock at night and you wait for until 7 o'clock, 3 hours. You don't have where to sit down, and you're dead tired, and you have to wait for the SS to come and count you. And then when they go up and count the rows, then they go back with their backs. And as they go, here is their faces, and here is the face of the girls, of the women, and they look at the faces, and if they didn't like a person, they take them out and take them to be killed. My cousin was taken a day after she arrived, and they picked her up. She was a twin to another girl, and she was taken away. And you just stay and watch. And I am with my mother, who is 47 years old, and they are being looked at twice a day on the Zählappell, and nobody noticed her. Where they take 18-year-old girls and 16-year-old girls and 20-year-old girls, they notice them. My mother, this is miracles of miracles. But then they did take her away one day. And it's terrible for us. And we didn't know what happened to her, what they were doing with her. And this was after a selection which happened in the barrack. My mother was taken away, and she had so much will to live, that when she was thrown into one of the little rooms, there are 4 rooms in each barrack. One was the blockälteste room. The blockälteste is the person who was supervising us. She's a Jewish girl from Slovakia who had been here 2 years already, and she had a room, and my mother ran into that room, and there were already many women, and she saw a cousin, and she says to the cousin, "Esti, come, let's find a hiding place." And Esti Neni, that's my cousin, no, she was my mother's age. She was there with a daughter, 24-year-old. And she says, "I am not looking for a hiding place, because the SS will come and they will beat us, and I don't want them to beat us." And my mother looks around and goes around and looks, and she finds a little corner, like this corner, for instance. And if this is the corner of the room, there is a little credenza, a little cabinet with glass, where the blockälteste was saving some little things. And she pushes away the little credenza, moves behind it, pulls it over, and waits. And the SS came and took out all the girls. They selected out 500 girls from our barrack. 500 girls to their death. It could be 12 years old and 15 years old and 20 and 30, whatever they liked. And my mother, and we didn't see my mother, and finally the selection was over, and we were stunned. Where is mother? Where is mother? And suddenly, when they took out all the 500 girls, they took them to be killed. My mother comes out from that little room, comes over and falls on our chest and cries and says, "Thank God that I am with you still." She was really scared. And we decide we must get out of Birkenau. We must get out of Auschwitz. We cannot stand this. My sister is 19 or something, 20, and I am 17. And we cannot stand this fear all the time that my mother will be taken away from us. Every mother already had been taken away the first day when they arrived. My mother, by sheer chance, was left with us. But to go through this pain, it was terrible. And we said, we are not going to cry for mother, but we must get out of Auschwitz. And a week later, an SS comes around with a loudspeaker and says, "We are looking for we are looking for 200 strong young women to take on transport, to go on transport." That's the magic word. And we are going. But we knew, because we discussed it before, that the risk of taking my mother away is much greater when we are in a group of 200 than when we are in a group of 1,000. You know, you can really identify the person. So we go, and we are given a shower, and then we are told to sit down in the next room.